Hello and welcome to the Michael Mamas Show. I'm your host, Michael Mamas, and we're coming to you from Mount Soma, home of the Sri Someshwara Temple in the mountains of Western North Carolina. Today we're going to talk about 2022 and do a little forecasting. It's going to be an interesting year. But before we get started, hey Scotty, how you doing?
Good.
Good.
Yeah.
Before we get started with that subject. I just was seeing, the biggest thing on the internet right now, what gets more hits than anything else, even more than Google, is TikTok.
Yeah.
Does that? I mean, I have you ever gone to TikTok? I've never looked at it.
I've never gone on TikTok, but
Huh,
you see the videos on other platforms. It's even
sure.
spread from stuff that they've made there.
Why is it
Goes
so huge? What's the appeal?
well. The appeal, I think, is like everybody wants these sound bites of things, and it's
Huh,
like 15, 20 seconds, 30 seconds. It's like Twitter, but a video. Like
I
a
see.
Twitter, like
I
you can
see.
you put out a small message or whatever, and that's what they're doing is they're putting and then everybody can do it.
Because
you know
most of the TikTok things that I've seen are just like nutty stuff.
yeah, but there's some nutty stuff, and then there's some stuff that people that are that's I think that's how it all started, is that's why there's a majority of it.
And I also heard that TikTok, something about the Chinese, or I don't know, and
They started it. Yeah.
they started it, and so why? Some people are opposed to it because of the Chinese involvement or something. Is there anything to that?
Well, I think it's just like anything else. It's just like Facebook. It's just like it's like gathering of information. Here we're
Yeah,
seeing about lifestyles, and we're gonna, try to
yeah,
manipulate or whatever. There's sides
I'm
that look at it
remembering
like
that
there's
now.
conspiracy, and there's sides that look at it like, well, they're just trying to, send you stuff that you'll buy or help your life.
Well, and
Or
also there's that whole thing about, and I don't really know that much about it myself, but just people don't understand the value of information that they get
right.
about people.
Yeah.
I guess what it gives them demographic information, or
Sure. Yeah. It's how they can sell advertising. It's how they can sell goods. It's all this information is important to marketing people and to governments, to whoever. I mean, information is power, they said,
does
right?
it also include targeting of individuals? I mean, because uh, I've heard so much about how you don't want your information out there.
Yeah. Well, I keep wondering about that too, is it's like, how important am I, in the scheme
Mm,
of things? Do you
yeah,
think
yeah, there you go.
Red China is going to be looking at Scott, or, I'm like, okay, I don't know how. I'd like to think I'm that important, you know, but I don't know. Uh, I don't know.
And it could just be because if it gets into the wrong hands, then they do that whole thing about messing up your credit and all like that too.
Yeah, but that's the whole thing too. Is if you notice that there's something wrong with your credit, what do? Or somebody stole some money out of your bank, you report it to your bank. You report it to the. It's a pain in the neck,
Mm.
but it's not like they can. I mean, if you're running from something or you're going somewhere and it happens to hit you at the bad time, I think then yeah, that's a problem. But
I just got a notification from PayPal a while ago. They were saying that I was being
hack,
billed 800 and some dollars for a purchase of Bitcoin, which I never
right,
did.
right,
So I called them up. I don't know how that happened, but I called them up. They canceled it,
right.
but it's still kind of weird. How in
Sure.
the heck does that kind of thing happen?
Well, I've been working with a guy that's a cybersecurity expert. He was one
Hmm.
of the guys that worked with Dr. Jacobs on the original internet. And he's like, Scott, if you don't want anything, you got to not use the internet for if you don't want, because his whole thing was there is no cybersecurity. He calls it cyber insecurity, because the internet was never built to be secure. It was built to be an open sourced forum where people could, I mean, it was built so people could print things. He said that's what they did, is they had these giant printers at this one government facility, and so people could send their things over, whatever they needed printed to this the place. That's how the whole impetus
The
of
whole
this
thing got started. Yeah.
And so it was never something that was, and then it morphed into opening up the world to everybody, and when you open
It's in its infancy now. I mean, we're going to look back 20 years, maybe less than that, and it's just going to be ridiculous how it's like the Wild West,
yeah, I mean, it already is. I mean, just think, there's the web, and then there's the dark web, and there's the, that
What is the dark web really?
Well, from just I don't you hear about it. I've read a couple things in terms of just that's where you can go where it's not like so much open sourced. It's stuff that people are trying to hide or trying to elicit things, or just people that don't want people to know. But still, that can be found out too. It's like a subset of it that maybe
They have ways of hiding it, but it still can be routed out or whatever.
Yeah, that's one thing Bruce said. He's like, it doesn't matter whatever security that you're paying for or whatever.
Uh-huh.
It maybe slows them down like a half a second, but it's if they want in and they want to get whatever it is, they will get whatever it is.
So how do you protect yourself other than just not being on the internet?
Yeah, that's the only way. Yeah, or don't care. Just know that people are going to look at whatever you're just accept it. That's.
I'm not too worried about them looking at it, but you see these things in there about stealing money, or all of a sudden you don't own your house anymore, stuff like that.
Yeah.
You just have to watch. I guess
you got to pay attention to your stuff, and if there's something that happens, then you got to report it, and then you got to go through the pain in the neck. That's one of the, I guess it's the price we pay for having
the wild west stage of the internet. It's going to change. It's going to get better. It's just going to take some time.
Yeah.
Do you know, Scotty, what the number one cause of death in America for people between 18 and 45? You know what it is?
Fentanyl.
You got it. That's right. Fentanyl.
Yeah.
And they've just I mean, it's pouring into this country. Was it in the last month, or I don't know, or the past year?
Yeah.
Enough fentanyl got in the country to kill everybody in the state of Arizona.
I'm sure. Yeah.
But
that
there's
takes
tons.
like a pin drop or something.
Yeah, that's right. There's tons more than that. And it makes me think about, I mean, this is karma coming back from the opium thing and the Boxer Rebellion and all that in China, when the West infiltrated China with opium and got all these people hooked in the opium dens and all that.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same thing, only, this is killing people. And I heard that 80% of the, how do we want to say it, recreational drugs and things that you get online, 80% of that stuff has fentanyl in it.
Yeah, they're lacing it with other drugs with fentanyl. Yeah.
And why do they do that? I guess just because, just it doesn't cost much and just put a little in there and people get high, or I don't know what.
Yeah, they get more bang for the buck, kind of thing. Because it's like, I guess it's like a supercharged, whatever it is,
Yeah. Golly, man.
That's why some places I've heard are will test your drugs for free, kind of thing.
No kidding. Test it for fentanyl.
Yeah, just so you know what you're doing, because now it's not like, I guess it's not like the old days when you could trust your what do they call them, your guy that gets you drugs,
supplier or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a college age girl, I understand, just recently that ordered some OxyContin. I guess it is online, and had fentanyl and it killed her.
Yeah, it doesn't take anything,
A couple of grains. I mean, just almost nothing. Yeah. Anyway, 2022. Let's do a little background on this. And I like to look at the big picture on things because I think a lot of times people don't, and we get so caught up in the small thing that we lose the context. So what's the context? So we're going to go way back. And I've talked about Darwin in previous podcasts, but just to say it in a nutshell, everything manifested out of the absolute, out of that field of perfection. That's just kind of the physics, according to Vedic literature, that's the physics of existence. Okay? That self-interacting dynamic of pure consciousness, of oneness, creates an underlying matrix of infinite intelligence. It's self-interacting, and then everything kind of wells up out of that. And so then you end up with a cosmic soup, now the Darwin stuff, and what happens is then Darwin said just through random chance, but studies have shown that it had to be more than random chance. But things came together, molecules got created, cells, and eventually it evolved into animals and ultimately the human species. And then what we've said is that there's an underlying matrix of intelligence that's there that continues to radiate out its source of coherence. And that sort of entices, seduces, induces, however you want to say it, the progression of evolution. It's infusing everything with that intelligence, and that speeds up the evolutionary process. But now where are we at? It's an interesting thing because, see, what happens is then you've got animals that get created, of which humans are an animal. But then what happens is in time, the intelligence and the consciousness and the expansion of awareness of humans, even before they were humans, really became so great that it mirrored or was close enough to the infinite intelligence underlying existence. And it was gravitating toward that, where finally it kind of clicked. And that's what they call the Big Bang of the brain, where once that happened, and there was a connection there, a direct connection, then the human brain evolved just incredibly fast, which scientists don't understand why, but that's why. It's Vedic knowledge, And so then you've got, so then what do you end up with? You end up with a human being, which is a species that's capable, through refinement, of embodying divinity, embodying that underlying basis of infinite harmony, coherence, intelligence, wisdom, and what I call common sense. What is common sense? Common sense is when we sense into that one thing that's common to everything. It's just common sense. It's what we find in the depth of our being. And refined common sense, that's what we call wisdom. So now, in the process, though, it creates an interesting thing, because what is a human? A human is half divine and half animal in a way. And I don't know, Scotty, sometimes I don't know if I should say this or not, but sometimes you think there's so much crude about the human physiology, just in bodily functions and that,
Yeah.
I mean, we're part animal, and then, but then we have the divinity that permeates it all. But now, where's the human condition at now? In a nutshell, where is it? Identity. This whole thing was so grand, so incredible. We try to understand it. We create simplistic models, simplistic notions, simplistic narratives to describe and explain existence. And so now so this brings us to 2022. And that's the context that I want to provide for us to understand where we're at now in the greater scheme of things. And that is that we've got it's coming to a head. We've got all these intensely conflicting narratives, be it communism versus capitalism, be it, Republicans, Democrats. I was at at a meeting in Asheville just the other day. And so we were sitting at the table, and one of those conference tables, and there were windows there. It was a street level. And you look out the windows, and I just was, as we were talking, I was just noticing the people walking by, and then even the other people at the table that I was meeting with. And there's so many, everybody, I mean, there's just all these different narratives. And they're so vested. We're all so vested in our own narrative. I know somehow at one point, Scotty, the subject of astrology came up, and you could just see, a lot of people were like, they just don't buy it. And, the idea that you're believe in some sort of understanding of astrology, even though, as I've said in my previous podcast, the conventional understanding of astrology, I think, is way off. But at any rate, that's where we're at in the world today. I mean, it's a wonder that people can even communicate. I guess they can't, really. One group and another group, and it's just all conflicting narratives. And what we've lost touch with then, to a great degree, not completely, but to a great degree, is that common ground, that one thing that is common to all things, common sense, wisdom. We're not functioning from there anymore. We're functioning from our narratives. Just a little, this might be a little tangentially, but I was thinking about communication. I mean, real communication. I'm talking here about communication between people, on an intimate level, people that you care about, a spouse, your kids, good friends and stuff. And Scotty, what do you think? I mean, the hardest, what makes communication harder than anything else? What's the hardest part of communication?
Wow.
It's an interesting question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I think for me, it's okay, trying to put it in words that the other person can take in.
That's good. That's good. And so what's the emotion around that? Here's the thing. I think it's fear. It's fear that by revealing those deeper feelings, really communicating yourself to another person, it's not going to be heard in the way you intended. It's going to be judged. And it's just such an incredible exposure, incredible vulnerability to really communicate what you're feeling about something, to the point where you don't even want to try because you're afraid what's going to come back, and it's going to hurt. And so we tend to protect that which really dwells within us, which is fear of misunderstanding, criticism, being attacked, all that sort of thing. What do you think, Scotty?
Yeah, that's definitely. But I don't know. I feel like I've gotten to the point where it's like I'm past that part. It's
No,
like,
what do you mean?
Like of worrying about what somebody else is thinking or what they're gonna say. I want you to be able to tell me what you feel, and I want to tell you how I feel, and it can be different and be okay. Kind of.
And the hope is that it's constructive.
Yeah.
But if it's judged, if it's attacked, if it polarizes, then it's not constructive. It can be destructive,
Yeah. But that's where I've been getting into conversation. Well, around here, it can be pretty polarizing. California, depending on who you're talking about. I mean, we go to my biggest, contact with like people that I don't know, but you get into conversations. We go over to this park where the dogs get together, and these people bring their dogs from everywhere.
Yeah.
So the people end up talking, and so you end up talking about. They ask you about this or that or whatever. What do you think about this? And I've had a lot of conversations where, it's people will be like, oh my God, I'm shocked at what's coming out of your mouth. But it's it's more like I've been trying to go into explanations about how it's just a different point of view, and your point of view is a point of view, and I'm sure in between all of this is where it actually is.
And we have it on different levels, don't we? We have it
Yeah.
on the most intimate level with our spouse or our kids or what
Sure.
have you.
Yeah.
And then we have it on social levels, walking your dog and talking to other dog owners and things like that. And then we have it on international levels. I mean, and you look at, I don't know, take any example, Iran and Israel. I mean, what are those people really feeling, deep inside? I mean, on the surface, yeah, this guy hates that guy and they want to blow him up and all like that.
Right.
But think about the convolutions that it goes to into the deeper feelings of their that dwell there in their hearts and their minds,
Yeah.
And it can't. I mean, try as they might, it's not going to get communicated. It's not going to get conveyed. When I was in India, there was this one saint I remember, and he said it really. I forget how he put it, but he put it so beautifully when he said, those finest feelings that are deep inside of us, if we speak them out, they can just get blown away in the furious winds of karma and projection,
Yeah.
And so it's a challenge, these things might seem fragmented and tangential, but there's that Winston Churchill quote, and here's your forecast for 2022. By the way, Winston Churchill, the way he put it is something to the effect that you can always count on America to always do the right thing after they've exhausted every other possibility. Yeah, had you heard that, Scotty? That's a good one.
No, I saw that and I was like, it made me laugh.
Yeah. And when I sent it to you, you mean? Yeah. Anyway, that's where we're at right now. We are exhausting all these different possibilities, all these different notions, all these different identities with these different narratives, and they're all coming to a head. They're all in conflict, and it's getting to the point. I mean, just a little bit of common sense, and you look at some of these narratives that are being promoted out there, and they're just nuts.
Yeah.
They were, oh gosh, who is it? I can't remember their name. It's some cabinet member from White House, and it's a transsexual. I guess it was a man. Now she's a woman. And
the one that's in charge of health or whatever.
Yeah. And they were asking her about pushing, becoming a transsexual, and having genitalia amputated and hormones and things for children without even telling the parents. And so that was a big issue. And when they questioned, I guess it was Congress questioning her about it, her response was, she said, well, it's a very complicated issue. And I would be happy to come to your office sometime and go into a detailed explanation of all the implications, something to that effect. And I'm sorry, but I mean, we're talking about children. And isn't there, tell the parents? Shouldn't the parents? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense to me. Scotty, help me out here. I mean,
you're saying that the parents should probably know about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that would seem to be like the common sense approach.
And then there are all kinds of things. I mean, you just look at the world, and all this is going to come to a head in 2022. I feel confident about that. And it also fits this whole Vedic explanation. This is the period of phase transition, because like ivermectin, people were dropping like flies in Uttar Pradesh in India. It's a state. Delhi's there, New Delhi's there, and it's I think it's more populated than the whole United States, I believe. But at any rate, they started passing out ivermectin like jelly beans, and it basically eliminated the problem of the COVID virus. And
Well, we personally went through that, Michael. I mean, I got COVID, or we got COVID.
yeah, your family, yeah.
We were all, like for the first day of it, feeling like garbage. We talked to the doctor. The doctor calls in the prescription for us. She says the only problem that you're going to have is getting some of these filled by the pharmacy, because we can prescribe it, but if they find out that it's for COVID, then they won't fill the prescriptions
Yeah.
for it. So we get the stuff. We didn't have to explain anything to anybody, luckily, somehow or whatever. Took the ivermectin, took the hydroxychloroquine, took all the, there was like 4 other things that we took, and started feeling better, like pretty much immediately.
Yeah, vitamin D, vitamin C, zinc, that whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah. But there was a cocktail of like 5 or 6 things.
Scotty, there are tons of physicians on the internet. I mean, these are qualified guys that are in practice and treated thousands of people, and they're saying all that. And they're saying that, it's the pharmaceutical industrial complex that we've talked about. Ivermectin is pennies. Every time you get a vaccine, you're helping contribute to these guys becoming billionaires who run the pharmaceutical company. Of the money, by the money, for the money. I was talking to a highly educated man, good friend, and when I brought up ivermectin, he said, "That's a horse pill." And so I said, to his credit, he was like, "Oh, I didn't know that." But it was originally developed by a guy in Japan and another guy, scientist, for humans. And even the, World Health Organization, they've got it rated up there with penicillin as one of the safest and most important drugs in the world, saving lives. But look what they've done. Look at the narrative they floated, And that's just one example. I really don't want to get into debates about ivermectin or transsexuality or any of these things. And there are tons of them. The border, for example, and the economy, all these things. What happened to common sense? I mean, where does common sense fall into that thing? And how in the world did we get in this position where so much of it is of the money, by the money, for the money? I think one of the things that makes it the hardest for humanity to accept all of this is they just can't accept that people would be that selfish. I was going to use the word evil. They just can't believe it. Why would people do that? But it's coming to a head, and it's going to come to a head. I think in 2022, we're going to see it. Inflation is one thing that really does concern me, because here's the thing. 2022, we're on the crux of so many, right on the edge of so many things that could fall one way or another. And how far it falls one way before it self-corrects and normalizes and we come back to common sense, which we will, that's a question. And we don't really know. I mean, we can have our soothsayers, we can have people predicting, but we're on the edge with so many different things that could fall one way or another. That all I want to say, and I think it's reassuring to realize this, it will come back into balance. And so if things get crazy, it's going to make it way more uncomfortable in the short run, but in the long run, it's going to come back into balance. 2022 will be remembered as a period of transition for sure. All this has got to come back together. but and sort out. But it'll be 2023, I think, before things really start to get clear, and wisdom starts to be restored to some degree. What do you think, Scotty?
Yeah, I think people, it's like on all sides. I mean, it's not just one side or another. They have their crazies that have gone out in full force, and they're finding that, all of these narratives that they're presenting are not panning out, you know?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like whatever it is,
Well,
right?
see, that's the thing.
Yeah.
If you get so caught up in a narrative, so caught up with a perspective that you lose touch, really. I mean, you're always at least lightly tethered to our own inner wisdom and our own inner divinity. If not, you're dead, because that's what supports life. That's what keeps us going. But if that connection becomes distorted or twisted or unclear, then you're out there further and further out on a limb, and things get nuttier and nuttier. I guess that's another way of saying what you're saying, huh, Scotty?
Right.
Yeah.
And I think one thing with the way that, there's good and bad about how fast information travels now, because you can get your narrative out there, you can get a lot of people doing it, but also
Good point.
it gets out there faster, and then people find out that it's not really gonna work faster. So you fail faster, you get out there faster to see your thing, but you fail faster or you succeed faster. People know, okay, well, this narrative is working, this narrative is not working.
Well, there's a component of that that's true, but at the same
Yeah.
time, and largely it's due to the internet.
Yeah.
Clash of narratives. We
Yeah.
live in an age of clash of narratives.
These are the wars. Yeah.
Yeah. What do they call them? Trolls. I mean, any troll can go out there and attack anybody, and they do. And all that. So it really has come to a head, and I think a big part of it was the internet. I mean, way back when, 50 years ago, what'd you have? ABC, NBC, and CBS, and they all kind of shared the same one narrative, more or less.
Yeah.
And so, right or wrong, at least everybody was thinking the same way,
Yeah.
Except
more
for
like stable kind of.
Yeah. And so now it's going to sort out because now we've got all this coming together, which is chaotic as phase transitions are. But what's really going to precipitate out of it in this next year is that people are going to, and it's already begun, but people are going to take a step back and look at it, and they're going to start to see beyond narratives.
Yeah.
They're going to start to realize that identity with the narrative isn't what it's about. And also at the same time, though, they're going to realize that, how that one lady put it at the dentist's office, I talked to her about it, people should mind their own business in a way. It's one thing to have a narrative. It's another thing to just have a lifestyle and a culture that cultures your life and your awareness. And so you function through it, but you're not completely lost to it, which is the distinction between cultural integrity and racism, cultural integrity and hatred. You have your own cultural integrity, and it's different than the cultural integrity of the guy down the street. But and it's not just a tolerance, it's an appreciation, it's an understanding.
Yeah.
And that's why they call it understanding. It's not overstanding, it's not lording over, it's resting into the divinity that dwells deep within you. And that's a wisdom. But you see, the problem is, there's a big difference between being wise and creating a wisdom narrative. Repeating wise quotes does not mean a person is wise. Real wisdom, it's a physiological thing. It's a state of being. It's not another narrative or attitude or philosophy that's created. And with all of this chipping away at different narratives that's going on now, it's going to sort out. And that's the real 2022 forecast.
Sure.
Things are going to sort out. You know,
Yeah.
it's already started happening.
The one I was thinking about, we were talking about predictions or whatever, and I was like, I'll predict if we don't change as a human race, our relationship with these things, we're gonna keep getting the same things.
That's a good point. That's
You know, and
really good, Scotty.
and but if we, like you were talking about, it's like when it leaves the lips of I've heard you say it a billion times, as soon as it leaves the lips of somebody, some wise person, it ceases to be what he says and becomes what the listener hears.
Yeah, when the master speaks, it immediately ceases to be what the master said and becomes what the listener heard. Yeah, that's the
Right.
quote. Yeah.
And so the thing is the listeners, us who are trying to raise our consciousness, we need to do that. We need to try to cultivate ourselves, take more responsibility ourselves of being able to pick these tools. I was always in sales. I was always telling the people, it's like, we teach them all these sales techniques, but I said, you have to be able to pick these tools up and put them down, because you're building a house, and you have to be able to, you can't just use a hammer to build a house. You have to pick up the saw, put the hammer down. You have to do that. All of these things are just like all these narratives. You have to be able to pick them up, put them down. What's best for the moment.
And how do you do that? You cultivate wisdom. You cultivate common sense.
Exactly.
And clinging on to one narrative or one worldview or one perspective, there's no wisdom in that.
No.
They're tools that you can pick up and lay down as they best serve the moment.
Right.
You see? Yeah, that's good. That's good, Scotty.
That's my wish for 2022.
Now here's the thing too. As far as predictions for 2022 go, you're going to hear, like we do every year, soothsayers, astrologers, numerologists, psychics, whatever, making their predictions. We're so on a cusp here that things could fall one way or another, that it's basically which way it's going to fall when it's teetering on that edge. It's a guess. And I've seen this. You see this a lot in finance, where you have these guys that say buy gold, and gold goes up, and all of a sudden everybody thinks this guy's a soothsayer. And so then the next thing they listen to him, and it doesn't happen, and all of a sudden Humpty Dumpty falls off the wall. But so in short, particularly in times like this, you guessed right, they're going to call you smart. You guess wrong, they're going to call you stupid. And the reality is, in the short run, where one thing falls, what direction it falls, who wins what election, whatever, it's a guess. We can have our feelings. Maybe who wins or loses an election isn't a good example, but there's a lot we don't know. And but let's say there is hyperinflation. That's going to be horrible. It's going to create chaos. But the good news is, whichever way these chips fall, it's going to sort out, and it's going to sort out over the next year. And sometime in 2023, I think, is when we're going to really start to see things move forward in a positive way. Anything else, Scotty?
No, I think
that's it in a nutshell. So just hang in there. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, and things are going to be fine, but it's going to be a year of chaos. Okay, that's it in a nutshell. All right, thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you again next time on Ancient Secrets Revealed.